to Australia, all through Europe, New Zealand, Africa, all around the world traveling. And the $50 bill and $100 bill said, all right, good deal. So the $50 bill says, well, I've been to Florida, New York, California, Idaho, Montana, Texas. The other two bills, clapping everything. So the $1 bill says, I've been to church.
That's terrible.
Vernon. It was better than I was expecting.
Worth a shot.
You leave it to Vern to give a joke.
Are we all ready?
We're ready.
We're ready.
Oh yeah, we're ready.
So quiet.
I know.
Steady, are you ready? What's going on?
A lively group.
We're tired. We is tired.
I know I wanted to put my hand.
Absolutely. I've been sipping on coffee the whole time. I'm trying not to.
I do this thing where I stay up till like 4 o'clock in the morning.
They should be coming in now.
And get
Are
up
we
at
ready?
7.
Yeah, I started the broadcast.
Wonderful. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for Cathedral of Faith, Church of God in Christ presentation on job readiness, the keys to landing your dream job. So tonight we have Malia Evans, who is from the Georgia Department of Juvenile Justice, who will lead our group in a discussion on interviewing skills, how to apply for jobs properly, and the importance of a network. So thank you all for coming tonight and being a part of this, and thank you to our panel. Doing this introduction on behalf of our pastor, who had other obligations tonight, but he may log on later after he finishes what he is doing. So thank you all again, and thank you, Malia, and you may proceed.
All right. So Terry introduced us all, but if everybody can just kind of give a little bit of information about your career. My name is Malia Evans, and again, I'm with the Department of Juvenile Justice. I've been in staffing in some capacity for probably about 16 years, mostly in recruiting. So next we'll hear from Vernon.
Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Vernon Johnson. I'm with the WorkSource DeKalb. I'm what is called an employment consultant. And a little bit about myself. I retired Marine, did 20 years in the Marine Corps. And after I completed my service as a Marine, I've been in workforce development since 1999, working with the Georgia Department of Labor, Goodwill Industries, WorkSource Fulton, and now WorkSource DeKalb. Thanks for having me.
Amy.
Hi, I'm Amy McGuire. I'm a talent acquisition consultant for Emory Healthcare. I have been in recruitment for the past 20 years. The majority of my career has been in staffing. About 15 years of it was in staffing, and the last 5 years has been in healthcare. I currently recruit for all of oncology for Emory Healthcare. So every clinic and every outpatient location that you see that has Winship Cancer Center, I do the recruiting for them.
Hey everybody, I'm Frederick Mathis. I'm a member of Cathedral, and I currently work at Delta Airlines in the executive compensation department. I've spent most of my career in HR. I've been at Delta for about 7 years. Prior to Delta, I was at PepsiCo in New York. And shortly I'll be at another large company doing similar work. So far in HR, I've done global comp, executive compensation, equity compensation, international comp, and dealing a lot with the C-suite executives in my current role. So I kind of have an idea of how they think, and I'm very involved in the interviewing and offer process. And that has given me insight to like the behind the scenes when hiring is going on. So I hope I will be able to share some information and give some tips that you find valuable.
Sorry, I was having a little technical difficulty there. So we'll jump right in and get started. We want to start with some resume tips. So you want to always make sure your resume reflects your skills inventory that is relevant to the opportunity you are applying for. So you may have several different resumes and you want to use the one that's going to be more appropriate for the job that you are applying for. You want to keep your wording simple, but include details to highlight your skills and strengths. Do not use contractions or abbreviations such as don't for do not or ASST for assistant. Double check to make sure there are no errors with grammar, punctuation, or spelling in your resume. Remember, the unwritten rule when it comes to resumes is the first 1/3 of the resume should focus on information that will create enough interest to read the entire resume. So with that said, I'm going to ask some questions to the panel. What are some things that should be omitted on a resume?
I'll start. Well, one thing I can think of, it really depends on what stage you are in your career. If you have been working for 10 years, there's really no need to put things like GPA on your resume. That is relevant if you are a recent college graduate. Really not interested, or I don't find it valuable if you've been working for several years, to include volunteer type opportunities and things like that. Again, makes more sense if you're a little bit more junior, but we want to definitely focus on your work and your experience. So things like GPA and what clubs you were in and, you know, where you volunteered may not be as impactful if you have been in the workforce for some time. So I would definitely omit things like that. And I mean, ultimately, a lot of times those things just add more space to your resume. So I would omit things like that to start with.
That's very good advice.
For me, in healthcare, I see a lot of resumes that just have things that they're not relevant to the job that the person may be looking for. Like I might see nurses that have some really old experience on their resume, and it's not to do with healthcare. Just take it off. Like we don't care about it. We don't even care to see it. We just really want to see what is focused on exactly what you'd be doing here and how much of your experience is in line with that.
I'd like to add, with your work history, some people may have a broad work history, and that's fine. But if you have a place of employment where you only work maybe a month and a half, and especially if it wasn't that favorable, you had some disagreements with your employer, don't even include that on your resume. So if you have a resume where you work less than 60 days and it's not really going to make or break you, I wouldn't even put it on your resume.
So question for you guys, how do you feel about putting pictures on the resumes?
Me personally, I feel your resume template, simple is best, unless you are specifically going for some type of creative type job, i.e. web designer, graphic designer, something like that. I don't really need to see your picture. Also, I mean, I think a better way for me to see your picture if I wanted to see it would be to go on LinkedIn, and hopefully you would have a LinkedIn profile. But personally, most of the resumes that I see, unless again, they are in a creative type space, doesn't have the person's picture on it. And so I personally am not a fan of it, but you know.
I say never put it on there. You're opening yourself up to be discriminated against.
Absolutely.
Never put it. You know, as we all know, if you're over 40, it could be become a little bit more difficult to get jobs. You're just opening yourself up to not get positions, and just don't do it.
Yeah, that's why I asked the question, because I think the new wave is people are like to put pictures on the resumes, and I agree. I don't, unless it's you going to be an actor, actress, model, or some creative field. I don't think it's necessary either. Okay, so what suggestion do you have on the best way to format your resume? You know, there are several different types of resumes. Do you have any suggestions on when is the right time to use certain formats?
I would say I always like to see what your exact qualifications are. So if you want to bullet those in the beginning of your resume somewhere, and it's in line with the job that you're applying for, I like to see that stuff ahead of time. The easier it is for me to go through your resume, the more chances that you have that I might call you. If it's taking me too long to get through your resume to find what I'm looking for, I might skip over you and go to the next candidate. Because some of the positions that I recruit for, once I post them in one night, I might have 400 applicants by the time I come back. And I have to look through as many of the candidates as I can to try to select maybe the top 20 candidates for that position, and then weed it down from there. So if I can't get through your resume fast, you probably will get skipped over.
Anybody else have any suggestions on formatting resumes?
And I would be in agreement with Amy. The core strengths should be right at the beginning, and most of the recruiters, they spend maybe about a minute to 2 minutes on a resume. They don't have time to really go into detail and in the first paragraph or so, your strong bullet points, your core strengths, and they put you in the pile. Hey, we're gonna call this person back, and they're moving on to the next person. So I would agree with Amy as well.
I might even be looking at a resume for 20, 30 seconds.
If you have 400 to look for, I can
Yeah.
see that. And so we kind of touched on it a little bit, but what key things would you look for on the resume? I know we're saying we want to make sure that it's something that actually is beneficial to the job that you're applying for. So you definitely want to put the experience that you have that relates to the jobs. What other suggestions or tips can you give on that?
Well, of course, starting with the baseline, make sure grammar is correct. Make sure you've had someone to proofread the resume, because there's just some mistakes that Word may not pick up, i.e. there and there. It may not come up as a little squiggly red line on your resume, but it could be wrong. So not only, you read it over, have someone else read it over. Typically, my job is a very detail-oriented job, and people that I interact with is the jobs are extremely detail-oriented. So things like bullets being out of place, if bullets are not in line, proper formatting and things like that, it's the immediate distraction and immediate toss. On a broader note, I always want to see quantifiable results. Show me some numbers, show me some stats. I want to know you did this, but how did you have an impact? Did you stay within the budget? Did you provide some cost savings? Did you come under budget for a project? What did you do that was impactful in this job? Because I'm typically not just looking for someone that can do the job, but to actually add value and enhance. So show me some quantifiable results and things that you've already done. Show me some innovation. Again, not looking for someone just to come in and be a seat filler. Similar to Amy, when we have open positions, we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of resumes, not looking for mediocre talent, not looking for someone that can just come and sit, looking for someone that can bring something new to the table and innovate. So I always like to see where you took something and made it better. Strong wording. I struggle with this a lot. If this is a manager position, don't have supervise in your resume. Say managed. Why? Like, I don't need someone to supervise. Supervise, like, say that you actually manage the project or manage the team. Don't tell me that you supervise. Don't tell me that you coordinated. So deliberate wording that shows like you're a leader, and not just another person applying for a job. And again, going into like the volume of applicants that we typically would see, address gaps. I will not try to call you and figure out why there's a 3-year gap between jobs when I have 50 other resumes that I could look through. So address gaps. You can just put the date and say sabbatical, stay-at-home mom, something like that. But if you want to progress, knowing that there are several people that have possibly applied for this position, be upfront, because again, typically hiring managers are not going to spend the time to deep dive into, well, why there's a gap here. Years ago, maybe, but now I personally don't see anyone typically trying to call a candidate and say, hey, I like you, but there's a big gap here. Can you explain that to me? So those are some of the things I immediately scan in a resume.
That was the addressing gaps. That's a good one, because a lot of people just skip right over, don't say anything.
Well, and to piggyback off of that, we're coming in a time frame, and we haven't seen this since 2008, 2009. We're seeing a lot of people out of work. We're about to see it again. So this is going to be an issue here in a few months, that people are going to be furloughed or whatever. And I think it's important you can just address it on your resume. I know we were saying that we don't want to see volunteer time, but it might come back to you. Employers are going to want to know what you did in that spare time. Like, what, were you volunteering? I don't know. But be prepared to ask or answer those questions. What were you doing to find a job in that time that you were furloughed? Because that's probably going to come up again. I would say too, also to describe what you did 90% of the time and not what you did 10% of the time on your resume. If you're not an expert at it, I don't say put it on your resume, because we're expecting you to come in to know how to do this, and you did it for 5 minutes of your day. I would say don't puff up your resume too much and then get on the job and not be able to do what you were actually hired for.
2 more things I just thought of. Make sure current job on your resume, present tense, previous jobs, past tense. Do not mix tenses within the different jobs. If you're not doing that job anymore, everything should be in past tense. And another thing, if you've been at a job for some time, show the job progression. That is a plus. So if you've been at a job for 10 years but had different roles, or you were on the same team but promoted a couple of times, show that job progression, because then that shows that someone thought highly enough of you to promote you a couple of times, and that will catch a hiring manager's eye. So make sure you show job progression if you have had some. Don't just put if you're at the job and you've been in that role for some time, but you've been at the job for even longer, don't just show your most recent job. Show us that I've been at this company for these years, but there has been job progression.
Also, if know what's on your resume. Know what's on your resume. A lot of times people have a professional do their resume, and that's fine. But when it comes down to interview time, they can't express what's on their resume. I've seen it so many times, and I'm sure my colleagues have as well. So know what's on your resume and be able to speak to it.
Yeah, and include professional organizations or any career-related volunteer organizations if it's relevant to the position, so that they understand that not only are you doing it in your job, but this is also something that you're doing outside of the job to try to gain more experience and knowledge on whatever the position is.
All right. Any additional information or resume tips from anyone before we move
Don't
forward?
make it 10-page unless your last name is Obama.
Yeah. And so while we're on pages, what do you think the appropriate amount of pages should be for a resume?
No more than 2 ever.
Agreed too.
All right. Okay, so we're going to move on and talk about interviewing. So I'll give a few tips and then we'll have some questions in reference to interviewing as well. So you want to make sure that you research the company and the interviewers, because of course now we have all types of social media, so you can research your interviewers as well as the company. You want to practice answer to common interview questions. You want to definitely make sure you be able to tell about yourself and your job and the experience that matches, but you can always look at I think Indeed does it a lot, where they'll have questions that will be common for certain interview positions that you're interviewing for. So you want to look at some of those, just kind of have some answers prepared. Please read the job description for the job that you are interviewing for. You can use the STAR method to answer questions, and we're going to talk about that a little later, the situation, task, action, and result. You can prepare questions for your interviewers. You definitely want to have at least 2 questions that you're asking at the end of your interview. Plan your attire the night before and make sure you are professionally dressed for your interview. Bring copies of your resume, notebook, and a pen. Arrive 15 minutes early. In Atlanta, you might want to arrive 30 minutes early so that you can miss traffic. We're not having those issues, I think, right now, but normally traffic is a big issue. So you want to make sure you can leave in plenty enough time so that traffic doesn't affect you being late. Practice good manners and body language, and don't speak negatively. Don't talk about maybe past supervisor or managers that you have an issue with or that you don't care for, or maybe didn't care for you. We don't need to hear those types of stories in the interview. Okay, so the questions for the panel is, can you talk about how to prepare for interviews, including different styles?
All right, I'll kick this one off. So one of the very important things that you mentioned is research the company and the interviewers. Please research the companies. Please, typically recruiters, if it's going to be a team of people, they send you the information of the names and things like that ahead of time. Go on LinkedIn, look at these people's backgrounds, their resumes. Look at their background and think of questions that you can ask them about their background and their history. Read news articles on the company. Google the company, see if they've been in the news lately, know what's going on there, and try to be relevant. I work in the exec comp, so I would never go into an interview and not have read a company's proxy, because that is essentially what I'm going to be doing as a job. So I'm going to go read that proxy and come up with questions that are specifically in that proxy to let the hiring manager and the team know, like, oh, he really knows his stuff. The first thing he did was went to the SEC and read our proxy to learn about our practices around compensation. Please research the company and know who you're talking to and know where you're going to be working for, current events, hot topics. But let's take a step back in interviewing. This is interviewing, and I can only speak to my experience because I have been interviewing a lot lately. I am going into a new role, and I have been doing a lot of interviewing. Thanks to COVID-19, the interview process will permanently look different for most large organizations. You likely will not get in your car and drive to anyone's office anymore. You likely will be hired without ever seeing an office. It's happened to me. You likely will only interview and meet people going forward via how we're doing it right now, on Zoom, on WebEx, on Skype. So interviewing in itself will look a lot different depending on, like Amy is different, so she's in healthcare. In the corporate world, we're not in the office and we're hiring, so you're not coming to the office to meet us. So you're going to do all of your interviewing is going to be done just like this, via phone or via some type of video medium. So with that, there's a different type of preparation, I think. If you know that you have an interview, put your dogs up. If you have kids, make sure that the kids are away and you don't have any distractions and you have a do not disturb sign, zone, whatever you need. Of course, there's grace if you've already working for the company and you're on a meeting and your kid runs out into the camera. But if you're in an interview and you're trying to get a job, you might get a different reaction. Make sure your background is clear. Make sure that you have good lighting and they can see what you look like. Make sure you speak clearly, loudly, and you articulate so they don't have to keep asking you to repeat yourself. Interviewing, again, I think COVID-19 has changed so much. And I think interviewing and recruiting, I read an article today in the Wall Street Journal where now like recruiting and job fairs will be done similar to how like if you order at a restaurant and pick it up, you will literally drive, like they had the pictures of people driving their cars up and recruiters in mass and, you know, doing the quick questionnaire to you through your window. COVID has changed a lot about how people will obtain jobs now. And so just be prepared to be flexible. If you are asked for an interview, I have to meet with the CHRO next week. We're just going to do it on the phone. I don't even know what the lady looks like. It's not an interview, it's more so of a coffee chat. But again, this is something that typically you would be called into an office to do. So just be flexible and make sure you have good equipment, good signals, good phone. No one wants to get on the interview with you and you're staticky. So make sure you're in a good area. With all of the people that are looking for jobs, you just don't want anything to prevent you from being considered the top candidate. Something as simple of you're in your house in the bad area and you keep chopping up. So keep that in mind around interviewing. It is quite possible, given your industry, you won't drive to anyone's office to talk to them face to face. And so be prepared for what that may look like and, you know, adjust accordingly.
Even in healthcare, we're not bringing anyone into the hospital. We're not adding anybody to anybody's interview in the hospital. Nobody's coming in, not a nurse, not a doctor, not anyone right now. Everything is being done on Zoom. We hired, we interviewed 480 people this week that are new grad nurses over Zoom interviews, just like this, with a panel of managers. It's very interesting. So like he was saying, to take a job too and never have seen your workplace. Be prepared.
Yeah, we just did a virtual hiring event with Department of Juvenile Justice. I guess it was last week, and we did a 3-day hiring event across the state, and we did everything from sending out Eventbrite, having people register, sending out emails. Everything was done virtually, and we never left in this situation. I never left this chair in my house to do the event. And then we actually got all those and scheduled them interviews that they did via Zoom. So when it was interesting, and what you said, definitely be prepared and think about it, because we had some people that were sitting there with children in the laps, and it's like, you know, you have an interview, so we know you're home, but you still need to adjust so that you can interview just as you would do professionally inside of office. So definitely put dogs, try to do noise, you know, but for certain, we don't need the kids in there in your lap while you're doing an interview. You still need to treat it like a professional interview.
I would add that I recommend that your device is a laptop, desktop, or a tablet. Some of the phones today may not pick up some of the graphics from different employers, and you might miss out on something. But again, as Frederick has stated, make sure you're in a quiet place and with no distractions. And practice saying your answers. When you're up in the morning, getting ready for your day, combing your hair or whatever, just practice. I had the opportunity about 2 weeks ago to visit several employers' sites and go through an interview via Skype or Zoom. And it was 3 different companies that really impressed me. But the first company, they asked the question, was already prepped already, and they gave you 30 seconds to ponder over the question, let it marinate a little bit, and then they gave you like 45 seconds to answer. And if you did not like, then you can review how you answered. And if you didn't like that, you could answer the question again. And the other two companies didn't give you those options. So it was just your first response and that was it. So different employers going to use different ways via this COVID-19 that we're going through now. So be prepared for that. And the day of faxing resumes and things of that nature, they're gone. And this is the wave of the future.
So we have a, I'm gonna say there's a question that came in, but we'll answer the question at the end of the calls. So, Amy, I know when we talked about this panel that you were going to share, I think it was selective interviewing.
So so it's called targeted selection, which is basically the STAR method, but behavioral interviewing, being prepared to just have scenarios ready in your mind of situation and task, the action that you took, and then what the result was. So they're probably going to ask you several different questions based on that method. So have some scenarios in mind of specific things that you did in your job. Like they may ask you, when was a time that you had to deal with a difficult customer or a difficult patient, or just whatever the position is. They might ask you just different behavioral questions, but that's what they're looking for, is for you to answer those questions in completion, and be able to explain exactly what you did, and not talk about like specifically what your team did, but talk about what your part was in getting resolution on that.
Right. Anyone else have any information in reference to the STAR method, or why we think that's an important method?
That is very common. Me personally, I feel like if you really did those things, you won't have an issue with talking about them and coming up with them on the spot if you actually did them. So I don't find it challenging personally. I saved that comment, but if you did the work and if you did these things, and a lot of times you can already kind of predict what they're going to ask you based on what's in the job description. If there's a bullet point that says, work with various leaders across the organization and achieve alignment and things like that, then you can definitely predict that there's going to be a question about, was there a difficult client or customer that you had to get alignment with, and how did you do it, and things like that. One thing that I usually like to do in interviewing is, when I'm meeting with a person, I just start off, hey, I'm so excited to meet you. I know you're extremely busy. I know you all have a lot of things going on, so I don't want to take up a lot of your time. Could you tell me kind of like what your expectation is of this role? What type of candidate you're looking for? And what are your expectations for like the first 60, 90 days of this job? I started off. And then, they're looking like, okay, well, first of all, he takes charge. And then it's kind of like they'll give you what you need to say. So, we're looking for someone who's a go-getter. And so then instantly you should be in your head thinking about what examples can I give where I was a go-getter? I feel maybe it's just my experience. I feel like, just be prepared that a lot of the traditional typed out questions that, you go to an interview and you sit down, because people really they don't want basic talent anymore. There is a need for most companies that I talk to and I work with and internally, they want we're hiring. If I got permission to have this head count filled, I want the best person that I can get. So, it's like, the STAR method is very common, but people they really want, and pun intended, a star. So, be prepared. Like a lot of the times, a lot of my interviews have just been conversations, really. There have been no questions. It's just been conversations. And through that conversation, the hiring manager got what they needed out of me, and I in turn got what they needed out of them. And then, it varies based on the industry that you're applying for or trying to get into as well.
Vernon, you have anything to add with that method?
Piggyback on Frederick, with me, I try to just have that dialogue a lot because I've interviewed so many times, and I always try to keep things light. That candidate is already nervous. It's, I don't know what. So I try to bring some humor in there to keep, things light and pull all the information I can from that candidate, and he or she doesn't know, but I'm checking off the standards. Name a time when someone did not adhere to company policy. What did you do, and what was the response? So with that, either they're gonna tell me something way back when or something current, and then I piggyback with questions off of that. And I tend to get more from the candidate that way and see if this candidate is giving us what we need.
So next we were going to kind of go into do's and don'ts for the interview. And one of the questions I was going to ask is, what do we feel about talking about salary during the interview? And so there's also a question on the chat that says, if you've been offered the job, and what money, how do you negotiate better benefits, and especially if you have a master's degree. So if we can talk about do's and don'ts when it relates to talking about salary, and when and if an appropriate time is to do that.
So this is something that I'm passionate about because this is like my bread and butter. I do compensation. So I am the guy that is sitting back there looking at your resume and your experience and your salary expectations and coming up with the offer. The first thing, typically before you, if the organization has any type of solid recruiting team, salary expectations should be addressed up front before you even move into the process. I use the term salary expectations because that is what we do. At my company, as you all are likely aware of, many states, it is now illegal to ask a person what they make. Given that we pretty much accept resumes and applications from people in every state, we just made the decision that we won't try to figure out what state you're from and see if it's legal or illegal. We simply do not ask anyone what they're currently making anymore. So, and I don't think most companies do that, but some may. We don't ask you what you're making. We will say, what is your salary expectation? From that, the recruiter should have a conversation with you. Yes, that is in line with the compensation for this role. No, you're not. Our range is a little low for what you may be expecting, but that is a conversation that should be had up front before you start meeting with managers and leaders and people like that. That's a conversation that should be had out of the gate. What is your salary expectation? If the salary expectation is not what you would want, please do not go forward with that. If you do and you are selected, once it gets to my desk, I'm going to do an offer that is in line with what we plan. At that time, it is not the time for you to try and negotiate and say, well, I was hoping for. No, you should have hoped for in the beginning when you had the conversation with the recruiter who told you what the salary expectations were. So please be upfront. If the recruiter doesn't drive it, you ask. You're not a mute. You do have an option in this situation. You ask, what is the salary range for this role? What does compensation look like for this role? You don't have to wait for anybody to ask. You ask. You have to be an active participant in your career. I hope you would want to. So if they don't ask, you ask up front. But that should not be something that you wait and get way down the road and figure out, hey, this really is lower than what I was expecting to make. I think you said part B was the question was, how do you negotiate more benefits or something like that?
Yeah, negotiate better benefits if you have a master's degree, especially.
Is this for you applying for a new job or in the current role?
So the question reads, how do you a new job?
Again, all of that, typically this is not a surprise. In the job description, in the job posting, it says what is the desired requirements and things like that. Master's degree, bachelor's degree, all of that is up front. if you have a master's degree and you applied for a job that minimum qualifications was a high school diploma, then you can't get mad with the employer for not wanting to negotiate with you, because that was up front. And then part B is you should have that conversation before you move through the process of trying to interview for that job, and just make sure that is aligned with what you think you're worth.
Thank you.
I agree. I would say definitely if you're working with someone in human resources or in recruitment, definitely talk to them about that up front. Do not get into your interview and start discussing money, because they're going to think that's all you're interested in. Definitely just work with whoever your recruiter is, or whoever's going to be extending your offer, talking to you even after the interview. That's your person. Don't spend your interview talking about money, because they're going to think that's all you're coming for is the money, which obviously we are coming for the money, but that's not it. And then you don't want if you are going to get an offer, you don't want it to be held up because someone like me is begging someone like Frederick for money all day and taking 3 more days to get your offer to you because Frederick won't budge.
No, you're not going to get it from Frederick. You knew what you were coming into.
And all full disclosure, typically I'm very fair when I'm doing offers. I really don't have time to go back and forth over $2,000. So I'm not that person, but typically at most of your companies, you don't have a lot of compensation people, and we are supporting the entire business. So, you being difficult in the process or a lot of back and forth is just going to, as Amy said, delay you getting an offer and, moving forward. That is absolutely accurate.
And it's kind of straightforward for us, like the way that Emory does compensation. It's based on equity, like it's strictly based on experience, and that's what it comes down to.
So, does anyone else have any do's or don'ts for the interviews? We know not to talk about salary during the interview. We've got that. Anything else that you could give a tip on what they should or should not do in an interview?
Have something to write with. A lot of times people come in for an interview and you're not going to remember everything. So have something to write with. And it's not a bad thing when the employer is asking you questions and you're taking your own personal notes. That's not a bad thing. That shows interest, and majority of employers like that. So have something to write with. I'm a Marine. The M16 was our weapon, but when you're looking for a job, that pen is your weapon. Bring something to write with.
Anybody else with any tips on what to not do or do in an interview?
Mm-mm.
So the last thing I'd like to ask is I know it's kind of new times from what we learned way back when I was in college. What are our suggestions on what you can now wear to an interview?
I mean, I definitely would say, you can wear business casual. You don't always have to be dressed in a suit. You can dress business casual. It really depends on the position that you're applying for, though. If you're, obviously, if you're a C-level executive or something like that, obviously you're going to be in a suit. But, you can wear business casual.
I agree. I think it depends on the position that you are applying for. Even within different companies, there are different cultures within the business units. So if you're applying for a marketing job, you probably could be a little bit more relaxed than you would be if you were interviewing for a finance job or a human resources job. So go on LinkedIn, look at what people have in their profile picture. I would just say be professional, but there is flexibility. Also, now with a lot of interviewing being done virtually, I can tell you most people, and I didn't do it, are not sitting at their computer in a suit. I did have on collar shirt, and sometimes a tie. And that's what most people, when I were interviewing them, would have on. And then especially if it was like, subsequent interviews after that first one, after you saw how the first person was dressed virtually, then you can just, mirror them. So keep that in mind. How you would dress for a virtual interview would probably be different if you are actually going to an in-person interview. So that needs to be thought through as well.
I will say in healthcare, if you're a nurse, a lot of times nurses may come to an interview with their scrubs on because they might have been getting off from a shift and coming over, to an interview. And that is fine because that's what you would be wearing in the job. It's fine. You're coming in the hospital. You look like everyone else walking by.
All right. All right. So the next topic, if anyone doesn't have anything else to share, we'll be moving into networking and social media, which is the current times, and especially now when we're looking at our new normal, as we like to call it. It's going to probably be more of, we've already gotten away from the walk into and apply for jobs, or the walk into and talk to people about jobs. We've already been at your LinkedIn and your different platforms where you're looking for jobs and some sort. Sure, it's going to be more than that now, since now we probably won't even be doing much interviewing in the office. So, when it comes to searching, you want to be proactive when you search. You want to use platforms to find useful connections, such as recruiters or business owners. I know, like I said, LinkedIn is a really good way to look at that, because LinkedIn also shows you, like, if I'm friends with Amy and I'm applying for a job at Delta, and Amy and Frederick are friends, then I can get to Frederick through Amy and know that he's with the company that I'm looking for. So I think that's a really good way to do that. What social platforms and organizations do you think are good networking opportunities?
Definitely LinkedIn, Facebook. We use both of those platforms. And like you were saying, linking up with someone who may be in a company that you're looking to target is a good idea. And you could possibly establish a relationship with someone who is friends with someone that you know. Some companies are going to be offering referral bonuses. You may be able to put Frederick down for referral bonus that might help you get to an interview. To use your resources. But Emory offers referral bonuses. So I always tell people, who do you know within, but definitely those two for sure.
I would say all of them: LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. I will admit that I was a latecomer to LinkedIn. I felt like it was professional stalking. And so I definitely tried to avoid it for as long as I could. But I will tell you, there is value in LinkedIn, and some of the more, I don't like to use the word young, but some of the more liberal companies will also use Twitter. Like, you will see managers that work and leaders that use that work at Uber, or companies like Uber and Facebook. They'll be on Twitter saying, hey, I got a role that is open on my team, and they'll send it out as a tweet. So all social media can be used for networking and looking for jobs. Just be mindful of using the Uber example, because I know someone who used to work for Uber and would tweet out if they had jobs open on their team. If your Twitter profile is, you're half dressed and things like that, it may not be wise for you to reply to the person on Twitter about the job. Maybe you carry yourself over to LinkedIn, where hopefully you have on a little bit more clothes, and you say, hey, I'm inquiring about the position that you were talking about. But again, LinkedIn definitely has its place. You can search for jobs on there. You can see what companies are posting. Just be careful. Don't be a social media stalker. Don't be weird. It is a professional setting. It is not Facebook. Don't get on there posting about your pets and, your cats and stuff. Save that for Facebook for people, because usually people aren't interested in that on Facebook anyway either. But don't use LinkedIn for that type of stuff. But I do think LinkedIn is important in both looking for jobs, saying that you are available for jobs, and networking. I get, just because people may know me and, engage recruiters will send me jobs all the time that are not for me or in my industry, but hey, do you know anybody that can do this? Like, I'm really having a hard time finding someone to fill this role. So definitely utilize LinkedIn to your advantage.
And I would add to that, USAjobs.com and Recruit Military, a good search engine as well. And also the church. The church, my pastor, the church I belong to, he did something and he asked anyone in the congregation to deal with staffing agency, recruiting, counseling, and they all came up to the front of the congregation. And then they just verbalized, hey, what they're looking for in that quick 10-minute session. And they got people's names in the congregation and refer them to job opportunities. And then at the end of that session, the pastor say, let's see where they are in 2 weeks from now. And it was over 20 people that got a job just from that event right there. So use the church as well.
And also organizations in your profession. So for example, I pretty much do compensation. So being a member of World at Work, being a member of NASP, National Association of Stock Plan Professionals, like those type of organizations that are in, what is your area? Because those people talk. When I had a role open pre-COVID and it was specific to equity, I immediately went to the Stock Plan Professionals site and said, hey, is anybody looking for a job over here? Because I knew immediately that professional network of people was the type of experience that I needed. So make sure you link up with organizations like that are in the vein of what your profession is in.
And that was probably the answer to the next question is, what are some ways to connect both in person and virtually? So I think the linking up with organizations that match what you're doing is a good answer to that as well. Any other suggestions on that?
Personally, I can't emphasize the importance of networking enough. Typically, most recruiters will tell you, or most people in HR will tell you, one of the top ways to get a job, to get your name and get your face in front of the right person is a referral. With so many applicants, with so many resumes, if a recruiter is working a job and there are 1,000 resumes in the queue, and I walk over to her desk and say, hey, I know this person, they do this, I can vouch for them, here's their resume, instantly they're going to get a call. And so you have to leverage the human aspect of human resources. And so network with people, not just for the sake of asking them if they're hiring, but just set up coffee chats, albeit they may be virtual now. Hey, I know you do this, just want to learn more about you, what you do, maybe tell you a little bit about myself, and leave it at that. And then when a job or something comes across that person's desk, they'll immediately think about, oh, I remember Malia, we had talked one time and she told me this is kind of what she do. I wonder if she's in the market. Let me see. So many roles are filled that way in corporate, where a lot of times just applying on LinkedIn or on the company website will not pay dividends. Getting to know people, having people be in a position to do referrals for you will pay dividends greater than you posting anything on LinkedIn.
That's true. That's almost how I got connected with this job is that somebody knew I was looking and they knew that this job was open and they told me and kind of linked me with somebody that could get me my resume where it needed to be. So,
I was a referral for Emory too. I had a friend who started working for Emory, and I just told her, if a position comes open in recruitment, please let me know. Might be something that I'm interested in. I wasn't looking for a job at the time, but when something came open, I went and interviewed, and I didn't even know I was going to leave my last job, but hey, I did.
So, if we have a question. So my voice is just going away. I don't know what's going on. right. So how do you break into HR when you never worked per se in HR, but in your current position, you handle HR responsibilities such as payroll, onboarding, or employee personnel file management. And in addition, I've handled change management and communication of personnel policies. I eventually returned to school to complete a master's degree in HR. Most jobs want 3 to 4 years of experience.
Staffing. That's your breakthrough. Staffing. Get into a staffing company, get into a staffing agency. If you could work directly for the staffing agency, or have a staffing agency help you break into it. Either you can work for them, or they can help you find a job, like maybe as a HR assistant. Maybe start out as an assistant first. But staffing is definitely a leg in.
And that's absolutely when I, many moons ago, achieved my master's degree in HR. I had no experience, and my first job was at a staffing company, like a junior recruiter, kind of assisting the recruiter. And I moved on from there, but that's how I got in as well.
So if you're at a current company and you're doing like all this HR like work, have you taken the opportunity to actually meet and greet with people in HR? Have you went and talked to leaders, had coffee chats, had lunch, made sure that they knew who you were, what type of experience you had, did check-ins with them and things like that. So start there with actually building, this is the human part of human resources. So actually start building relationships with people in human resources that could probably look out for you, vouch for you, be a referral, and can say, hey, she's kind of already doing this work in another space. I think this is something similar. Let me reach out to her or him. Also, as both Amy and Malia have said, maybe not try to come into HR as an HR manager, maybe come in as a coordinator or something, just so you can break in and then move your way up. But again, I would definitely say, have you tried to build relationships? If you're doing all this work, sounds like very much HR work, have you tried to build relationships with people in HR that, so you again have that network, so when something does come available, they know that you're interested, they know what you're qualified to do, and they can, reach out to you when they know of something and be like, hey, I think we have something for you over here.
Right. Vernon, do you have anything to add?
Well, I think my colleagues covered everything pretty good there.
All righty. So then we'll go into our wrap up questions. And so what I'd like for us to do is we'll go around and we can all tell about our current organization and what positions are available. And in the case of Vernon, of course, resources that you have available. So Amy, would you like to kick that off?
Well, sure. Right now, I will tell you a lot of positions with Emory, they're not on hold and they're not frozen. They're just on a pause because we are waiting to see what happens with the 12th wave of COVID here. But I can tell you anything treating a patient, nursing positions, advanced practice professionals, those positions are open. Anything treating a patient, you may be able to find opportunities available if you're interested in them. Our website is emoryhealthcare.org/careers. And you could pretty much just go to that site and you can put in keywords for positions that you're looking for to find what's posted right now. I can tell you, typically, we have about 6,000 to 8,000 positions posted daily. We do not have nearly that many right now. Everything is patient care directed. But we are, I will say this, Emory is recovering at a faster rate than a lot of other hospitals around the country. So we do expect for a lot of our positions to be coming back slowly, but surely. So there will be a lot of things that open back up over the next couple of months.
Right. Frederick?
So at Delta, there are no jobs. We, as you all can imagine, thanks to COVID, Hospitality has been hit likely the hardest, specifically with travel being hit the hardest. People are not getting on planes. People are not traveling anywhere. Revenue is down. Our passenger count is down. So right now, Delta really isn't hiring for much of anything. That all depends. That could change depending on this, 20th, 30th wave of COVID. But again, it is going to be a slow recovery for airline industries, given that, COVID has changed everything. We just talked about interviewing, but, also there won't be much business travel now because people have realized they don't need to get on a plane to have a meeting. They can actually do it on the computer. So, there just won't be much travel industry employment available anytime soon. I am eventually going into a different industry. The situation will probably be a lot different over there, but airline, currently there isn't anything available, but please, again, use resources that are available to you. There is a hashtag on LinkedIn, hiring now or get hired. LinkedIn has an article where they post everyday companies that are currently hiring. There are tons of industry. I know this for a fact. There are tons of industries that are hiring right now. So make sure that you get connected to sources like that to find employment, especially if you're here in the Atlanta area. But if you need any other tips, if you need resume review or anything like that, I'm willing to help. But as far as open positions, we do not have any right now at the moment.
Okay. And I'll talk about our open positions at the Department of Juvenile Justice. We are always hiring for juvenile correction officers, food service workers, and housekeeping. And you can go to Team Georgia Careers to find our process. You can, and like I said, we're always hiring for that. There are other positions that may be open, but those are for sure ones that are essential during, look, we're at the 25th wave of COVID now. And so, Vernon, you want to tell about your resources?
Okay, thank you, Malia. Basically, WorkSource to CAB is two entities, the youth department and the adult dislocated worker. Right now, we just received a grant for the youth department, $750,000. We work with youth from the age of 14 from the summer, but mostly 16 to the age of 24, but we go down to 14 for the summer program. And the adult, one of the programs we really try to highlight is the work experience program, where you go to work for an employer, and at the end of the 90-day period, with a good faith effort, become full-time with that employer. So we focus on the high demand career occupations, healthcare, project management, IT, transportation and logistics, construction, and there's always something going on in construction in the ATL. There's a lot of construction opportunities, CDL opportunities. People need transportation. We need drivers like yesterday. That's always huge as well. We also have a first source entity where entrepreneurs that's starting a business can come and learn and how to develop their organization, and some of the things that we offer as advertising, marketing. You can utilize our facility to interview candidates, screen candidates. What else I want to say? And right now we are, since we're doing this Zoom thing, that it's becoming more and more popular. So we're doing a lot of work with the Georgia Department of Labor. It's a grant. I'm kind of cart in front of the horse, but we just spoke on that yesterday, and we're going to be doing some things with the Georgia Department of Labor, and it's called Employ Georgia. So our website is WorkSource to CAB, www.worksourcetocab, employment.org. And you can go to our website and canvas for employment opportunities as well. So anybody have any questions, I will give my information to Malia and can contact me at a later date at their leisure.
You're on mute.
I just figured that out. It gave me a little. I just wanted to see if you guys were paying attention. I'm glad to know that you were. So before we wrap up, does anybody have any additional comments, tips, or advice for anyone looking for a career or a better career?
Oh. Just stay positive. Have a good attitude going into it. It's about to be a really difficult time to find a job, harder than normal. Just keep your spirits up, and even when your spirits are down, pretend like they're up.
I would add the same thing you did when you had a job, getting up early and start canvassing for employment. It's the same thing you have to do when you don't have employment. You have to get an early start on canvassing some of the search engines that we spoke of earlier, and that's the key. And do that every day diligently.
I think I gave a lot, but you know, don't underutilize the tool of networking. You know, make sure that you're using social media, LinkedIn, things like that. Also, if you're in between jobs and don't have a job right now, make sure that you're trying to have the competitive advantage, because there are other people who don't have a job as well. So there are tons of companies that are offering free courses, reduced courses. There are tons of certifications online now that you can do. Every time I open my LinkedIn, someone is having some type of webinar or some type of instructional course. Do a lot of that stuff so you're staying current, so that you're staying fresh, so that you have the competitive edge over other people. And that you're not just becoming stalemated by sitting at home waiting for a job posting.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of Frederick, I've been seeing a lot of that where there are a lot of colleges offering either really, really low prices on certifications like PMPs and other certifications, or free. So that is a good way to stay abreast of making sure that you're at the top of the market when it is time to find a job, because like Amy said, it's going to be really difficult now because a lot of companies are able to see how they can do a lot more with less, and they're not going to be using as much space. You'll be doing a lot of stuff at home. And in companies where you have most people, like in hospitality, it's going to take a minute for them to rebound. So you definitely will have to kind of keep yourself up on your skills, and maybe even look at something transferable or a different opportunity than what you would previously be looking for. So Terry, do you have anything?
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. We appreciate all of you being on the panel, and on behalf of our pastor, Bishop Mosley, and First Lady Mosley, we really appreciate you sharing the gifts that you have and the insight and knowledge that you have with the members and friends and community partners that we have at Cathedral. Also, we'd like to thank Elder Patton for being the behind the scenes tech guy tonight and helping us set all of this up, as well as Sister Linda Israel for putting the flyer together and helping us organize this. The publications team and all of the teams that worked with us to put this together. Also, thank you to our phenomenal pastor for allowing us this time to share this information with you all. So if there is no further comment or information that you'd like to share, we appreciate you all, Malia, Frederick, Amy, Vernon, and we'll be getting your information so that if those who are on the call with us tonight would like to reach out, maybe to network, or maybe to connect with some of the resources that we have available, that we can connect those individuals with you. So we thank you and we appreciate you. We hope that you have a wonderful night and a great rest of your week.
Everybody stay safe.
Have a good evening, everyone.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.